Hey guys, how you doing? Luna here with a new video for the channel. Welcome back to another episode of the Ranked series where I take your favorite artists and rank their discography from worst to best. Since it's Kanye weekend, today we're talking about no other than the man of the moment, the person that's been all over TikTok, the news, and the minds of Jewish people too, Kanye West. This is the last video from Kanye weekend. We asked the question, is Kanye West overrated? We also talked about, who's better, old Kanye or new Kanye. Today, we're deciding which is Kanye's best album and we're organizing his discography from worst to best. Please do remember that this is only my personal opinion, so if you have your own, I'm pretty sure that you do, leave it down below in the comments so everyone can see it. I'm gonna, I organized this list not only considering enjoyability but also important, the relevancy of the record in the music industry, because Kanye is quite an important figure for music, meaning that not necessarily because one record is above a other record, it means that I enjoy that record more. It's pretty much because maybe that other album is more important or was more influential. Anyway, I'm not gonna waste that much time. Let's just go on with number 10. At number 10, we're gonna have Yeezus is King, and I'm pretty sure you all know this was gonna be the lowest ranking album because this is just a bad album, honestly. Kanye, this is the only actually bad album that Kanye has in his discography. The production is not good. The lyrical themes are fucking childish and stupid. I'm pretty sure that, you can do some really great concepts and you can, have some really interesting lyrical themes within religion, but Kanye doesn't really show that because most of the times that he actually mentions Christianity in this album is to kind of justify his own actions or to kind of say, I don't understand why Christian people don't like me. I made an album about Jesus and they're still criticizing me, as if, making an album about Jesus sort of gives you a token for you to act the way you want to act. You do have a few highlights on this album, but they're really few. I think that this idea of mixing gospel and hip-hop, it's a really good one. I'm all for it, but the way that he does it here, it's so uninteresting and so boring. For example, the track Yeezus Gospel may be the best moment of the record, but it's such a short track. It's so irrelevant to the rest of the album that, I can't even give this album a chance. That's the reason why it's number 10. At number 9, we have Yeezus, his 2013 industrial hip-hop, normal hip-hop mix that he did. And I honestly do enjoy this album. I think it's a good album, a massive improvement from number 10. I believe that, many of the ideas here had good intentions, but the way that they were performed seemed like they were slightly rushed or not quite developed. So many times in this album, you're going to be kind of underwhelmed by a track that could have been way more than what, it actually was. Because yeah, you do have some highlights here. I love Kanye's energy on Black Skinhead. I also love the beat and the just this grandiose feeling in Blood on the Leaves. The way that the horns kick in, I just love it. How heavy the track is. I like how the opening track On Sight presents the sound of the album. It kind of tells you like right in the face that this is not going to be another My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. And I do enjoy Bound 2 is one of my favorite hip hop beats of the last decade. I think it's a really good track if you ignore the lyrics. But the rest of the album, literally any other track on this record, like New Slaves, Hold My Liquor, I Am God, just kind of, give you a feeling of wasted potential. Such an interesting genre and such a wasted opportunity for Kanye, which is the reason why I'm putting this album at number 9. But it's still a really good album. I personally really enjoy it. And yeah, number 9. At number 8, we're going to put Ye, and the reason why we're putting Ye so low on the list, even though it's probably one of the Kanye albums I've heard the most, is because I feel like, again, a lot of wasted potential, a lot of rushed material was added into this album, and still, even though, it's only 24 minutes long, it feels like the album was not ready 100%. You'd think that you were gonna have, a focused Kanye, but no, you don't. Actually, Kanye isn't really all that present in the record. Many of the best moments of this album don't really have that much of Kanye going on, you know. For example, the chorus in Ghost Town is arguably the best moment on the record, and Kanye is nowhere to be seen or on that, part of the track. Also, the track You Wouldn't Leave. I do like Kanye's energy on the track Yikes. I do like the sort of metaphorical or irony behind it. The track I Thought About Killing You, Kanye saying, I thought about killing you because I thought about killing myself, and I love myself way more than I love you. It's an interesting album. It's definitely an interesting listen. It's an album that every Kanye fan should listen, and I do think it's really enjoyable. It's definitely an album to listen to if you're a Kanye fan. I do encourage you to go ahead, because a lot of people don't know about this album, or do know but decide to ignore it due to how short the album is. But the shortness of the album, the fact that it's only 24 minutes long, kind of give the album its own space in Kanye's discography, and a space that I'm always happy to come back to. I know a lot of you are going to kill me. I know that you're probably just disliking the video right now, even though no one can see the dislike button anymore. But I think that 808s is, number 7 is a good place for 808s. Why am I putting 808s so low on the list? Well, pretty much because even though I can agree 100% that many of the ideas here in this album shaped the way of hip hop in the 2010s, I'm all for that argument. I do believe it's true, and I do believe this is one of, probably Kanye's most important album. But because it was such a unique way to treat hip hop, and because, the album had the sound it had, I think that many of the ideas here seemed kind of rushed or not completely developed, which make the album a mixed bag for me. I do like many of the tracks here, like Cold as Winter, obviously Heartless, one of the biggest hits from 2008, and Streetlights, one of my favorite Kanye songs of all time. But in between those tracks, there are these portions of Kanye trying to sing and rap at the same time that don't really, I'm not the public for that. For me, I do like when Kanye does his best to put on a good singing performance, but I think that, it's kind of like a Drake thing where you cannot be both at the same time. And, I think that because this was such a left turn for Kanye, I don't think he knew how to, separate the new Kanye from the old one. And that makes the record, the overall enjoyability of the record suffer from my point of view. So that's the reason why I'm putting it at number 7. It is a great record. I do recommend for you to check out the album, but it's only number 7 more than anything because I like the albums that come up next more than this one. But it's one of the most important albums in terms of hip hop from the last decade, even though it was released in 2008. It's an extremely influential album, Kanye's most influential record, as a matter of fact, and a record that, everyone should listen to at least once, even if you don't like this type of music, because this is music history. This is really important, a really important and relevant moment for music. So yeah. Now let's go with number 6, and at number 6 I'm putting The Life of Pablo. This album was villainized when it came out. A lot of people were hating on this record. I think that with time people were starting to see that this was actually a great release. It is true that some parts of this record feel rushed, and that's just a constant with new Kanye. Ever since My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, it seems like every time that he releases a record, there are 5 or 4 tracks that feel rushed, ideas that were not were not given the space necessary for them to evolve, as well as songs that just feel like they weren't supposed to be on the album, like Part 2, for example. What the fuck was that, mashup of different rap songs and different beats put together? Completely unnecessary. I love Kanye. I mean, what is that track doing on the album? We all love the meme. I kind of like the groove, and I like the a cappella nature of the track, but was it necessary to put it halfway through the album, cutting off the whole vibe? Also, even in the best tracks here, production can feel sometimes, like it wasn't completely finished, like in the track Part 1, Father Stretch My Hands, where I do like the beat. I do love the way that the beat sounds, but Kanye's autotune in that track just doesn't feel right, along with the lyrics. Many of the fucking lyrics on this album are so outrageous to the point where they're just delusional. But the whole thing with Father Stretch My Hands about the model and the bleach and his asshole just don't fit into the greatness and just overall epic nature of the track. I like the inclusion of gospel into Kanye's, craft in Ultralight Beam. But apart from that, I think that, even this is a good album. I do like this album a lot, but it still has a lot of flaws, and I think that the flaws are almost as present in the album as the good moments. So yeah, that's the reason why it's number 6. A lot of you are going to kill me for this. I can already tell, this whole he made graduation meme has to fucking stop. I don't know why you're hyping up this album so much. I do like the album. I do think it's a really good listen. One of the best albums of 2007. You have some, some of the most obvious hip hop pop crossovers that Kanye made. Even as important as 808, I think this album is extremely influential too, with features from Chris Martin in the track Homecoming, which is one of my favorite songs from the album. You also have Flashing Lights, again hinting towards the left turn that he did on 808. But you also have some really good beats and performances from Kanye in tracks like Good Morning and Can't Tell Me Nothing. And this album, I think it's, one of those records where it's more about the hits and the highlights rather than the entire listen. And that to me is never a good sign. So I do love the record. I do think it's one of Kanye's best. But I never understood the hype behind this. He made graduation meme that I just don't get it. He has better albums. He has more nostalgic inducing albums. So why is this one the one that gets mentioned? I don't know. Good album, but only number 5. And number 4, I'm putting Donda, and I do know that for many of you, this may be, an outrageous placement for this album. This album, even before its release, it was already hated. It's the truth that Kanye didn't treat the fans the best way possible before the release of this album. A bunch of controversies, a bunch of listening parties. It seems like the fans were the last ones to hear the record, and when the record actually came out after a year and a half waiting for it, it still felt a bit rushed at some parts and, bloated as hell with 27 tracks. Some of them being completely skippable, like the fact of having a part 2 of 4 tracks in the second half of this album. But still, even though this album is 2 hours long, way too long for its own good, I feel like this, in terms of, Kanye's new discography or most recent discography, is the biggest victory he ever pulled off. Because this album, in terms of production, ideas, features, everything sounds so epic, and everything sounds like pretty much just a victorious moment for Kanye, a massive W. Because, I don't know, I just feel like this is the closest thing that Kanye ever got to making My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Again, something that he has been constantly trying to do with albums like The Life of Pablo and albums like Yay. I do think that Kanye at a lyrical level is way better than what we saw in The Life of Pablo or any other record from the 2010s. I do think that the features are used in such a great and effective way that, it only plays in favor of the track. I think that Kanye, just like in My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, is more a director, someone that's leading the album rather than just performing in it. And, you have amazing, beautiful tracks like Moon, Hurricane. You have some bangers like Off the Grid. You have Jesus Lord, which is one of the highlights in terms of lyrics for Kanye. One of the moments where it seemed like old Kanye, the person that Kanye that treated himself seriously. And overall, I just feel like there are a bunch of great ideas in this album performed in a really good way, and that makes for a great listen. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that there are a bunch of tracks here that you could have, ignored or skipped. Definitely this album could have been only 18 tracks long, and that would have made the album even better. But, even with the 27 track record as it is, it's still a great listen. It's still one of my favorite albums from 2021. And, it was quite a good year. And I just love the record, I just love how it sounds. It reminded me, it kind of reassured my feelings at the time, with everything that Kanye was saying at the time regarding Pete Davidson and the Kardashians and Drake. I had this feeling that I was kind of, forgetting the reasons why I like Kanye as an artist, and this album kind of reminded me the reasons why, and I just love the record for that. That's why it's number 4. Now at number 3, we're going to put Late Registration, an album that for many of you it's number 1, and I can totally agree with you. The thing is that, this top 3 could go either way. All of these three albums are great listens, 9 out of 10s, and I just love the way that each and every single one of them sounds. The reason why I'm putting this one below number 2 and number 1, it's basically because I kind of feel like number 2 and number 1 are far more important. But in terms of enjoyability and quality, I feel like all of these are on the same level. In this record, you have arguably Kanye's biggest hit with Gold Digger, a track that I'm pretty sure you all know. Even if you're not a Kanye fan, you've heard this track. But you also have other moments, for example, the beautiful and super emotional Hey Mama, one of my favorite Kanye West tracks. You also have Heard Him Say with Adam Levine. You also have We Major with Nas, one of the hardest bangers in the whole album. You have Roses, a lyrical highlight on this record. And again, the album is really long, 20 plus tracks. That can be a bit too much. It's not an album that you can listen to in any, in every situation. Sometimes you just don't have an hour plus to listen to an album. But when you do, this album is one of the most consistent, leveled albums in terms of quality, one of the most cohesive albums Kanye has ever done in terms of ideas and styles. And a massive win, an album that really does show that Kanye wasn't really, only a one-hit wonder with The College Dropout. He effectively mixed pop music with R&B, with soul music, with hip hop in this record, and it all sounds so great. It all sounds so Kanye. It all, the sound of this album represents an era of hip hop that, even though it's lost, you can still go back to, and it sounds as fresh as it did in 2005. That's the reason why I'm putting this album at number 3. At number 2, we have My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and I know that for many of you this is number 1, and I can totally see why this album is great. I do think the album is slightly overrated. I don't think it's one of the best albums of the decade or something like that, but I do think it's a really important record. It showed ever since the first track on the album, Dark Fantasy, how much of a different album this was going to be, with Kanye playing more as a director and an orchestrator rather than just a performer in the album. It seems like Kanye stopped only being a rapper to become something that was present in the whole track. Is it the production? Is it in the bass, the guitars, the drums? Everything yelled Kanye at you in this record, with tracks like Power, which has one of the best beats, as well as Runaway. You have the wonderful All of the Lights. You also have a wonderful underrated gem on this album featuring Bon Iver, Lost in the World. You have the track Monster. There's not a single track of this album that's only like good or just mid. Everything sounds great. Every single track is awesome, and that is the reason why it's number 2 on this list. I believe that Kanye mixed even more pop into his sound, which is the reason why this is one of Kanye's most popular records and has some of his most popular hits. I do believe that this Kanye orchestration is like the beginning of his downfall in terms of creativity, but at this moment I would argue that this is the biggest level of artistry that Kanye reached in terms of his career and him as a solo artist. So for me personally, I do think this is one of Kanye's most important records, not his best, but definitely a good candidate for being one of his best albums. So that's the reason why it is a number 2. Great record, a total legend of hip hop, and an album that I'm always happy to go back to. For number 1, you couldn't have any other album. The College Dropout is not only Kanye's best record, but one of the best records of all time. One of the best debuts of all time, if not the best. I need to think about it for a moment, but this was such a breakthrough for Kanye. He already had a name to producing for Jay-Z and other artists, but this was just a record that launched him to stardom. And the fact that everything here sounds so professional, even though this is his first album, it doesn't sound like it. This album sounds like like it was released by someone who was already in the game for like 5 years prior to the release of this album. You don't feel like Kanye is just a new upcoming rapper. You feel like he has been here for a long time. He just knows what he's doing. With tracks like All Falls Down, you could tell that he knew how to build a hit. The political themes touched on the album in tracks like Jesus Walks, one of my personal favorite hip-hop songs of all time, and one of the best beats and best productions as well. Everything about this track sounds so professional and well done. School Spirit, another hit with the new workout plan. You also have Through the Wire, again an amazing beat. The use of samples in this record is great. You know, every single beat on this album is great. It showed how much of a skillful producer Kanye was and how much of a genius he was, basically. You know, this album, if this album does something, is showing that Kanye, you know, is an actual genius. He's not just someone that came up with a good formula of how to mix hip-hop music and R&B and all these different styles and knew how to use samples. Kanye actually, you know, Kanye's brain works in a way that he knows what sounds to make to mix with what sounds to make a good album, and he knows how to blend two genres together. He has showed it again and again and again, but I think that the point where it worked out the most was it's this album, you know, this R&B hip-hop fusion. So this album only works as evidence as to why, you know, even though he's saying a bunch of weird, dark shit lately, people still try to root for him and people still want him to do good. The amount of people that Kanye inspired and the amount of lives that Kanye touched with his career all started on this album. This is, again, one of the best hip-hop albums of all time, and, you know, one of the best albums of all time overall. And I'm always glad to go back to this album to remind myself why is it that I still like this man even after all the things that he has said. You have great production, great performances, great lyricism, and just overall a great record. So that is my number one. That'll be it for today's video, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other videos that I upload. I know that some placements here don't really make that much sense, but remember that, you know, in order for me to make this list, I kind of had to combine the overall enjoyability of the record from my point of view and how important the record was for the music industry. And, you know, I feel like a lot of the times people tend to remember the records from old Kanye and overrate them or exaggerate the impact that those records had on music, which is the reason why you can see some recent albums being better than old records. But overall, you know, I went back to all of these albums before doing this video, and I'm pretty happy with the list I've built. I think that, you know, this does represent my feelings towards Kanye's discography really well. And once again, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that I can see you guys soon with another video soon. This is the end of Kanye Weekend, but if you have any other idea, leave it down below in the comments and I'll make sure to check it out. But for the moment, I guess we have to say bye.
It's kind of fun because when this goes online or whatever it is, it really matters. And it like really doesn't matter. What matters is, you know, the people who are sparked by it and the people who are like offended by it. It doesn't fucking matter. Fuck you, you know, like, because it's about motivating the doers. And anyone that wants to sit around and talk shit, they're taking too much time talking shit about it instead of getting up off their ass and following their dreams. Because I'm here to follow my dreams, you know, and help other people follow their dreams and inspire people who are dreamers.